Hey there, it's Louie, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this itsy bitsy Amigurumi skull. And really quick, before we get going, please like this video down below and subscribe to the channel. It's the only way that the YouTube algorithm really notices me, so it'd be really helpful. Also, if you want to follow along with the written instructions, you can find them at clubcrochet.com/skull or at clubcrochet.com/Halloween, where you can find all my other Halloween themed patterns. Now, this is my newest addition to my Amigurumi challenge, which is a challenge that I've given myself to create patterns with less than 100 stitches and no sewing other than to sew it closed at the bottom. You might have seen some of my previous Amigurumis, like my little candy corns, a little tiny ghost. I even have some other ones like a squid, a killer whale, and a little jellyfish. There's a bunch of them. You can find them on my website, clubcrochet.com. But in this video, we're going to be making this tiny skull based off of my previous smallest skull. This is going to be my small skull pattern. Now, I will say this previous pattern, if you want to try it, it's really fun to do, but it is very difficult. I would say this is a hard or maybe even advanced pattern to make. But this new pattern, this tiny skull, is actually pretty easy to make. Now, if you want to crochet this along with me, all you're going to need is the following things. And the first is just a little bit of crochet know-how. This is not designed for complete beginners because of how tiny it is, but it is a very easy pattern to make. If you are a complete beginner and you've never crocheted before in your life, I suggest starting with my Crocheting 101 series, which is my free series to teach you how to crochet, or a more easy pattern like our ghost pattern. This one is designed to teach you how to crochet. You'll also need, of course, some yarn. You can use any kind of yarn you want actually for this pattern. I like using most my Club Crochet Amigurumi cotton yarn, or you can use this Bernat blanket yarn. That's really cool to use. I've even made some using embroidery thread. This is actually easier than you think to make. But in this video, I'm going to be using Bernat maker yarn, which is just very clear to see on the video. And it's a yarn that I actually really enjoy using. If you want to learn more about it, you can find links in the description down below. Besides the yarn, you're going to need a crochet hook, of course. I'm going to be using a size G 4mm crochet hook because it works best with the yarn we're going to be using. You'll need a pair of scissors for cutting stuff, a darning needle for sewing closed ends, and you won't actually need any stuffing at all for this pattern. You can make it all by just using some extra thread as stuffing instead. Last things, there is a left-handed version of this video available in the description, as well as time codes, so you can quickly jump around in this pattern. Okay, well, let's get hooking. Make sure to like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's get started on our little tiny skull. Okay, we're gonna start with our main color, and we're gonna start with a magic loop. Now, I'm just gonna go ahead and assume you know how to make the magic loop, but if you don't and you want a tutorial, there's gonna be a link right up here in the corner that'll go through my favorite way to make the magic loop ever. Okay, so once you have the magic loop, we're gonna start with round 1 by making 8 single crochets into the center of our magic loop. So I'm just gonna go in the center, yarn over, pull it under, then going over the stitch, yarn over again, and pull through 2. You want to make 8 of those single crochets into the magic loop to get started. So there's 1, 2, and I like to crochet relatively loosely. Well, I guess not too loose, but you just don't need to crochet it too tightly because this pattern is already so tiny that it actually makes it a little bit easier to crochet it a little bit more loosely. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. We're going to pull it nice and tight and continue on to round 2. For round 2 of our tiny skull, we're going to be working 3 single crochets and then an increase into the next. This pattern is going to be worked in the round, meaning we're going to work in a spiral without turning. The only part we're going to turn for is the very last round. But for this part, we're going to start by going into our first stitch right here. We're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase repeated 2 times around to go up from 8 stitches up to 10 stitches around. So into our first stitch here, we want to make sure our tail end from the very beginning is worked around for this entire round. And then we're going to yarn over, pull through that stitch, then going over the stitch, we'll yarn over again and pull through 2. That's going to be our first single crochet. We want to do 3 of those and then an increase, meaning 2 in the same stitch. And you can kind of see I'm not going to be using stitch markers for this pattern either because it's so tiny that you finish the rounds up so quick. So there's 1, 2, 3 single crochets. And then our next one right here is going to be an increase, simply meaning 2 single crochets into the same exact stitch like that. And that's going to increase our piece up. And don't forget to work around this tail end as you go for this round. It just makes everything a little bit cleaner if you just can hide this, this tail end in as you go. Like I said, this should pull your stitch count up from 8 stitches up to 10 stitches around. It's going to be our last stitch in the end of round 2. And it might kind of twist in like that. You just want to poke it outwards like this. so that the right side of the stitches, which look like this, are on the outside. Okay, you can pull your tail end a little tighter if you'd like to. We can also cut this a little short. I usually actually don't cut it, and I just stuff it in with that later, but that's okay. We're just gonna have it like that for now. Okay, so now we're on to round 3, and round 3 is gonna be where things get a little bit more interesting. We're gonna start by doing 2 single crochets, and then we're going to make a hole, aka an eye. To do that, we're going to work a half color change into the back loop only into that 3rd stitch. It's still a single crochet, it's just worked into the back loop only, and it's actually not too tough. Let's start by doing 2 single crochets to get to that point. And before I finish my 2nd single crochet, so there's 1 and 2. Before I finish, yarn over and pull through, we're going to actually grab our secondary color, which for this video is going to be our black yarn. And we're going to place it in between the 2 loops on the hook and the 1 loop attached to the ball of our main color. Then we can yarn over with our main color and pull it through those 2 loops to kind of lock our new color into place. Now we want to flip our yarn over so that our new color is over the old color, and then take our crochet hook and go into the back loop of the next stitch. The back loop means this one furthest away from you. You don't want to work under both loops like we have normally been like this. Instead, this round you want to work only into that back loop. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go into that back loop only right here, and then yarn over with our secondary color and pull that through the stitch. Then we're going to flip the yarn back under again so that our main color is under it, and then yarn over with our main color and pull through those 2 loops so that only the bottom of the stitch is our secondary color. I always like to pull our secondary color off to the side for just a second as we get to our next hole. I like to do 2 single crochets between holes. So we're going to do a single crochet into our next stitch. That's going to be the stitch after the back loop only stitch. So right here, we're going to get under both loops, yarn over, pull it through, and yarn over and pull through 2 just for a regular single crochet. We want 2 of those in a row. So there's 1, and then here's our second one. But before we finish our 2nd stitch, we want our secondary color in between the 2 loops again, and then we can yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. The only reason I don't work around our secondary color for that first stitch is so that the yarn doesn't poke through the stitch too much. You can work around the yarn. It just, I find that the color changes are a little bit like noticeable when you do that. So I like to pull it off to the side instead. All right, now we want to do another one of those eye holes. So we're going to go into that back loop of our next stitch, flip our yarn over so that our new color is on top of the old one, and then yarn over with the new color, pull it under, and then switch back over so our main color is on top, yarn over with our main color, and pull through those 2 loops. Now I'm going to take our secondary color and just place it off to the side like that and just ignore it. We're going to come back to it later. We don't need to cut it or anything like that. For the rest of our 3rd round here, we're just going to do 4 more single crochets to get to the end of the round in both loops. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then 1 more will be right here for 4. Okay, so now we're on to round 1, 2, 3, 4, which is kind of our last round. We do have 1 round after this, but it's very short. For this next round, we want to start with an invisible decrease, meaning working into the front loops only for 2 loops. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go under the front loops only of the next 2 stitches simultaneously, like this. Take a crochet hook under the first front loop, loop it around, get it under the second front loop. It's basically a decrease. You can use any kind of decrease you want. This is just my favorite decrease. Once you're under those 2 front loops, we can yarn over and pull it through those 2 front loops like that. Once you've pulled through those 2 front loops, you can yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops to finish up your first and only invisible decrease. Once you've done an invisible decrease, we want to do 2 more single crochets and then another eye hole into the 3rd stitch here. So we're going to go into the next stitch, which is going to be right above our first eye hole right here. Yarn over, make sure you're under both of those loops, pull through, yarn over again, and pull through 2. So there's 1, and then we want 1 more after that right here. So another single crochet after that. Before I finish that second of our 2 single crochets, we want to take our eye color here, place it in between the 2 colors, and then yarn over and pull through to lock that new color under the 2 stitches. All right, so now we're going to do another one of those half color changes into the next stitch right here. We're going to go into that next stitch. Make sure you're only under the back loops. Remember, the one furthest away from us, like this. We're going to switch the yarn over so that their black yarn is on top. Yarn over and pull it under the stitch. and then flip back under so that our main color is on top, yarn over again, and pull through 2 loops to finish up that last color change. Then we can actually cut our black yarn. We don't need it anymore. I'm gonna cut it a little bit longer than normal just because we're gonna stuff it into our piece anyhow, and I don't want it to come undone. And then we're just gonna fold it off to the side. In fact, I can just probably actually just stuff it into our piece to get it a little bit more out of our way. All right, to finish this round up, we're going to do 2 more single crochets and then slip stitch into the last stitch. So first we're gonna do our 2 single crochets worked under both loops of the next stitch. So like that, under both loops of our next stitch, and we're just gonna do 1 single crochet there, and then 1 more into the next stitch right here, like that. Then we're going to do a slip stitch into our next stitch. We're gonna stop early, but do a slip stitch by going into the next stitch, right here, yarn over and pull it through that stitch, and then through the loop on the hook, like so. All right, so that's gonna be the end of that round. You're stopping a few stitches early, just 2 stitches early. We're gonna turn our piece and do our very last round. For our very last round, all you need to do is work into the back loops only, meaning the loops furthest away from us right here, and do 5 slip stitches in a row. We're gonna skip our first stitch and then do 5 slip stitches worked into that loop furthest away from us right here. Okay, so we're gonna go into the next one right here. Make sure you're into that stitch, yarn over, pull it through, and then through the loop on the hook, like that. So there's 1, then the next stitch over right here, 2, oops, there we go, probably 3, there's 4, and then 1 last one will be right here. So just 5 slip stitches like that. To finish this up, we can cut the yarn. You want a somewhat long end just for sewing it closed, about that's probably fine. And then we can just pull it all the way through like that. Okay, now we just can stuff our piece up. I actually like just using some extra yarn from my previous skull. So I always like to save the tail end from my previous skull, wrap it around my finger so it makes a little ball, and then stuff it right back into our piece. So I don't even have to use stuffing for this. I can just stuff it with our previous yarn. You don't really need to stuff it up very much at all, by the way. Okay, so now here's how to sew everything closed. Place our crochet hook off to the side. We're gonna thread this onto our needle. And it's actually not too tough. Basically, all you need to do is work into the front loops only of the next 3 stitches and then the unused back loops only under the teeth, and then pull it nice and tight. So we're gonna go into our first front loop only right here. I'm just gonna go 1. Next one's right here. Will be 2. And then the last one right here is gonna be 3. Then we're going to work into those unused back loops only. The first one is this stitch right here. It kind of looks funny, but actually if you flip the teeth in, you can kind of see those unused back loops only. So this part right here is our slip stitch, and then this one under it is that unused back loop only. So I'm going to go into the first one right here and just keep doing that across to the piece. So there's 1, there's another one. And you actually don't really need to work into all of these unused back loops only, but you want to work into some of them to really close the mouth up. So it looks like this right here is going to be our last one, just like that. And then we can hold it nice and tight and just pull it really tight to close that loop up. Then I like to take it, let's pull it even tighter. I like to take the end, go straight back down into the center, and then up through. I actually like going right up through the top so that I have something to sew it onto later on. So pull it up through the top like that. And you'll see it kind of pulls the face in a lot right there. So I like to take the teeth. It does look really cute like that actually, but I usually like to take the teeth and just kind of pull them out a little bit so that they're a little bit more pronounced. Okay, now you can cut this end if you want to, or you can use it to sew onto a keychain or to an earring or something. So I'm just gonna cut it like that. And there we go, a tiny itty bitty skull. Look at how cute this is. This maybe is my most, my most impressive pattern with the least amount of stitches I've ever made. I just think it's so cool. I'm seriously addicted to these. I made so many of them. I hope you like it. Thank you so, so much for crocheting this pattern along with me. I hope you enjoyed making it as much as I enjoyed designing it. And I am absolutely obsessed with this pattern. I've made over 100 of these little tiny things. My fastest one is made in 4 minutes and 49 seconds. Let me know in the comments if you can beat that. I'm very curious if anybody can make that faster. I thought that was so quick, but maybe you can make it quicker. I'm very curious to see. If you want to check out more of my Halloween themed patterns, you can check them all out at clubcrochet.com/Halloween. You can also find my more Amigurumi patterns like this little squid here at clubcrochet.com/Amigurumi. Please like down below and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We do little live stream crochet alongs every week and a bunch of other crochet patterns just like this. Yeah, you can also share your project with me by tagging us at @clubcrochet on Instagram. If you want to find all of our social media handles, you can find them in the description. Thanks again for watching. Pasta la pizza, happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Happy Halloween.